Okay, welcome everybody to our special meeting of council. We're meeting to review and prioritize the status report. It's Monday, February 19th at 3 p.m. Council, we have an agenda in front of us, so I'd like to call for an approval of the agenda after first recognizing that we're doing our business on the unceded traditional territory of the Hupetchisitt and Sishot First Nations. Motion to approve the agenda as distributed would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So, one topic is our status report. And sorry, I can't see it all on my, oh, there it is. It just came back on my computer, or on my iPad. We're going to go through our status report, council, one grouping at a time, and decide on what we want to do with respect to the priorities, whether to leave them high, change to medium, or change them to low, or whether to remove them completely. And also, we may wish to add something or change something. The one thing that, we've already debated these, so try to stay away, if possible, from debating them all over again. We just want to make sure we've got the right fit. So, first one then is CAO. Not sure, Mr. Ply, if we need to go through any of these, or if you're okay with just going through them one at a time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff are happy to support council, whether you choose to go line by line or whether you have councillors flag what's the next one of importance to you. So really, up to council what manner we go through. I would agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that we shouldn't be debating these. We should just talk about whether we make a change to them or not.
Okay. I'm going to go through them line by line because inevitably we're going to do that anyway. So okay. In the end, it'll probably save us some trouble. So the number one is pursuing the provision of kitchen and yard waste collection service utilizing city resources. My question, CEO, is isn't that already in process?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. It's in process. We've ordered the trucks, as the report tells us, and we're supporting the regional district in helping them get prepared to receive and handle the organics. And hand in hand with that, we'll be getting our resources ready to collect separated material and the education piece that goes with that sort of thing. So that'll all unfold at the same time. So whether or not this stays on the status report or comes off, it won't change the fact that we're moving forward with it. But I don't see any need for a change in, there's no updates for that.
Well, it's clearly a high priority because we've already started it, but it's already in motion, and other than getting a report back in terms of what the relationship is like with the ACRD and how they're progressing in terms of being ready to receive this stuff and handle this stuff, the decision to proceed with it's already been made. We made that by council.
I agree. So we could stay on, it could come off, it would make really no difference at this point.
Councillor McClement?
Yeah, I guess the only concern I have is if the ASRD doesn't figure out that they want to do that, because it still really hasn't been, yes, they've said so, but there's not a whole lot's been done, so we should at least be somewhere wary of something, alternate plan for temporary if we have to.
Well, any other comment, council? What's the wish of council? You want to leave it on, or you want to take it off? It's already been set in motion. I would, my looking at it, I'm thinking the CEO is going to keep track of it, and if there's anything changes, he'll bring it to our attention. Councillor Sobey?
I'm prepared to make the motion to have it removed from our status list.
Okay, is there a seconder? I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Second one is the MOU between the city and the Hupatchisitt First Nation. Councillor Minions, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, I was actually going to say, I'm not sure that having these number 2 and 3 on here is really a reasonable spot for them, just because I think our reconciliation committee is more focused around reconciliation in the community, and not necessarily, I don't think that the committee really wants to be debating things like this all as a group. I think it should be more government to government, rather than all parties and members of the public who are at the table. So I think there was reasoning we put them on or we wrote this on the status report, but I'm not sure it really makes a lot of sense to have them on here waiting on the reconciliation committee.
Okay, so are you suggesting leaving them on but not making it the responsibility of the reconciliation committee? Is that it?
Yeah, and I'm not sure, how staff would want to proceed on them, but I think that, I don't see personally the reconciliation committee specifically discussing MOUs and protocol agreements.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
If I can, items 2, 3, and 4, all refer to the Reconciliation Committee. My recollection is that intention was that council wanted to move on 2, 3, and 4, and that we had discussed holding those actions pending the outcomes of the Reconciliation Committee report back. So not necessarily that they would do that work for council, but that we didn't want to move forward until we'd heard back from the Reconciliation Committee. So would council prefer that we change the language to say on hold pending reconciliation?
I certainly would agree that we take it away from, any reference to the reconciliation committee unless it's just, some sort of future decision pending the outcome of the reconciliation committee discussions or deliberations, or however we wish to phrase it. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I can see number 4 probably staying with the reconciliation committee simply because that's what it's about. But 2 and 3 are something that we've been pursuing with the Hupatchisitt and have had with us a shot. And it's how we're going to function. It's almost like a business agreement and how we're going to function. And I'd like to see something come out of that in the way that we're going to work together, especially on the economic development of the valley. It's to their benefit for sure, and it's also to our benefit. So I'm not sure just where it's at or what, but I agree it shouldn't be in the reconciliation committee because they're looking at a different process entirely. In fact, they're looking at a process.
Okay, Councillor Minions?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me I think it should stay on, maybe just changing the comment around it. I don't think that it's something we want to not move forward on, but as CAO said, it might be good to just wait until we make some progress on the reconciliation committee. I think it's important work to be done, but I don't think that it's something that the committee specifically is going to be discussing.
So when you say that, are you referring to number 4 or are you referring to 2 and 3?
2 and 3.
Okay, because I have to agree with both what you're saying and what Councillor McClement said, which is really this is a government-to-government situation, and it's quite a responsibility. It's not appropriate for the Reconciliation Committee probably, so maybe we need to work on that separately. Yeah. When we have our regular meetings with the chief and CAO, that's certainly a topic that can be brought up. Maybe we can advance that a little bit. I don't see it as I still see it as a high priority. I mean, we've been trying to get it done for 3 years now.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to maybe cut to the chase, for 2 and 3, would you like to strike the comment, reconciliation committee discussion and recommendation? Just strike it away?
I think so.
Okay.
And then I think the number 4, it's almost something similar. It's pending.
Yeah. On hold pending.
Pending completion of their work.
We'll do that.
So it may be, it's hard to say whether it's still high or whether, you know what, it's probably fine to leave it as high, but it's dependent upon what they choose to do. Okay, are we all right, Council? We can move on? Oh, yep. Councillor Paulson?
If I could, with Mr. CAO, 2 and 3, I think, if I remember a year ago before we put it on here with the Reconciliation Committee, we were already working on that. Can you kind of give us a status of what point we're at, and kind of where we need to, you don't have to answer that today.
Yeah, I'm just recalling, we were at different points
Yeah.
with who Petra said, and from Shot, and we had reached a point where I think we didn't know the path forward, and then we hoped the Reconciliation Committee could help with that. Some time has passed, we could reconnect and say to each government, where do you think we're at with that? Re-engage.
Okay. Moving on then, from a regular meeting of January 22nd, looking at the cost of moving community policing office to 3rd Avenue. CAO, don't we have a resolution on that one?
Mr. Mayor, I recall that council was interested in considering the move, and Inspector Hunter told council that we would work on getting a proposal basically with a price attached.
But hasn't he come with that response saying essentially it's way too expensive to move it to 3rd Avenue?
I believe he said that in that discussion, but council has not said, okay, let's not do that, to my recollection. So if you're okay that that's not an affordable option, we can strike it, or if you want a more definitive price, that's what this tells us to do.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé, do you have anything that you can add to this?
No, just to add that what the inspector was trying to state, that to move the community policing, I know our lease is up in March 21st, and we're going to be in discussion to renewing the lease down at the Harbor Quay. The biggest issue was to get some presence in the uptown. There's already some patrols going up in the uptown, but would it be beneficial to have the community policing uptown? And absolutely. All I know is that there was certain requirements that has to be met with the RCMP structure-wise for the protection of the volunteers and so forth. And I'm talking about a bulletproof glass, so we're talking about many thousands of dollars. But again, it would be up to council to make that decision if they're wishing to invest in that. Did we get a direct number as into how much of the cost? No. So if you want to leave that there and get a specific number of dollars and all that to come back to council, then I'd be all for that. But all I know is that it would be an expensive avenue to move, and it wasn't necessarily coming out of the RCMP budget that the city would have to cover the cost.
Mr. Mayor, if this is not something the council wants staff to spend time on, then I would ask that you'd strike it from the status report. Otherwise, we're going to do some work on it just to demonstrate that what we already think we know is that it's too expensive.
Yeah. Councillor McClement?
Yeah, a lot of people were quite excited when we voted to do this originally. And I'm not sure what too expensive is.
The number I heard
Is it
from...
100,000? Is it 50,000? You know, to me, it's, we have a serious problem and a presence there. I think is needed. If we can't do it, okay, but I'd like to know how much.
Okay, the number I heard from the inspector was $1 million. So whether that's true or not, I have no idea, but maybe we need to get a number.
Yeah, that sounds way out of line, but I'm not a construction guy.
Well, nor is he, so that's why it's just, it's a number that's been pulled out of somewhere, but I don't know whether it's real. So, what's the will? Councillor Alberni?
Yeah, I would speak in favor of just keeping it where it is, and then we can get a report back, because I think the community wants to, see where that goes.
Okay, let's leave it there then.
And Mr. Mayor, you'll see that there's no designation, although it is red. Council, I don't believe, gave a designation on priority. So if you want to consider that now, that would be helpful.
I'll make the motion that we put as a high priority so we could address some issues. I know we have some stuff going up in the uptown and the rest of the city for the patrols, but I would like to recommend that it stays high.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, the next one is pursuing shared service opportunities with ACRD, even though we voted on it? All right.
The present community policing station moved from Third Avenue down to Harbor Key. Can we look back in our records to see what it cost to move it from Third Avenue to Harbor Key? To move it back to Third Avenue, to have it that far out of whack doesn't make sense to me. But do we have a record of what that move might have cost us? And
So
maybe we could have
the
a
moving
look at that?
costs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Pursue shared service opportunities, ongoing. I don't see anything changed, and that we continue to work with the ACRD when those opportunities come up. And I know that Director Thorpe is right on top of it. She's doing the next major stage. Okay, anything else, Council, on that one? Number 7, staff to investigate potential for receiving market revenues for services from properties under jurisdiction of senior governments. I bet you, Councillor McClellan, that was
I'm
your...
not sure why it's low, that's all.
Because the reality of getting, I shouldn't be laughing, but it's a challenge with
I
the...
understand that they've just said no in about 4 different languages. So, yeah, and I think it just should be something with, leave it at low, and I'd like to keep it on here so that when something comes up, if someone, I'm sure there's different things that go by the desks of staff members, and if they see something and remember this is there, maybe there'll be some avenue we can take that we haven't seen yet. Because it's just ridiculous.
And are you feeling the same about the reviewing of services that we provided by a different level of government, number 8? Or could be discontinued?
Yeah, I'm not sure where we get with that. We can take that off, I think. I'll move that we take that one off. Number 8.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, from our clerk's department. Policy requiring review and adoption of policy manual following each general municipal election. We have this is something you're doing on your next holiday there, City Clerk?
Yeah,
Nothing else to do on the plane for
right.
8 or 10 hours?
It is a bit of a work in progress, Mr. Mayor, and our Manager of Human Resources has been working really hard to update a lot of the HR policies. I would suggest from my part, I haven't done anything on this for quite some time, but recognize that it is still on there and it still needs to be done for sure.
So just leave it,
Yeah.
okay? Number 10, report on mail-in voting for future elections. I believe, City Clerk, that's something that you're working on for our October 20th election upcoming.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am hoping to get an election bylaw before council fairly soon. So that would be in regards to number 10 and 11 on the list there.
Okay, so would it be fair to change them from low to medium?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Given what's coming up, it would make sense. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, whether it's medium, low, or high, it's got to be done in the next couple of months, so
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. With the sign bylaw, what were we looking at? A number of signs per candidate, or?
Mr. Mayor, I've been reviewing some bylaws from other communities. Specifically, it was just having a really clear policy around signs and where they could be. That's sort of the major concern for me. Last election, there were, so many candidates on the ballot that signage, for the first time for us, was quite an issue. So I really want to be on top of that this time, and whether it's our sign bylaw that I'm going to review with our Director of Development Services, or whether it's creation of a policy. We need some kind of clear statement for this year.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Minions?
I just wanted to add that at UBCM last year, we had a really good conversation with
Bob Simpson.
Bob Simpson, Quinnell. And about what their community does for election signage. And it was really specific, but they wanted to make sure that public spaces weren't like completely polluted with election signage. And so they made each candidate submit a plan of where they had a limited number. They could have like 10 or something like that, and submit a clear plan of where those 10 were going to be. And then it just held people to that standard of putting them there, leaving them there, people maintained to make sure they were there, that kind of thing. So it might be worth reviewing something like that. If I remember correctly, last election, we were allowed to put our signs wherever, and I think that had changed from the election before. Or maybe that's just what people did. But I think having something clear is a really good idea. And I liked the idea of having everybody with their paperwork had to submit a plan for where their signs were going to be.
And Bob Simpson is from where?
Mayor of Quinnell.
Okay. Because Tofino has something similar. In fact, I don't know if they allow signs, but I'm not sure. Okay. On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried. And then we have Community Urban Food Inventory webpage and information. It's from the Food Security and Climate Disruption Committee report. Councillor Alberni?
I'll speak to it, just that this was being worked on by Jake, our former communications person, so we're hoping to be able to work with Alicia to get this moving on.
Okay. So it's just ongoing?
On hold, ongoing for now, yeah.
Okay. Any wish, council, rest of council, to change that? Or are we okay leaving it low priority? Seeing nothing, let's move forward. And then the last one was updating the community forest terms of reference. I'm not entirely sure what that's about. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I don't remember. September 17 wasn't that long ago. But I don't remember. Only thing we would want to change the terms of reference is when they were out looking for more cut possibly, but I sure wouldn't want to be changing anything about setting up the way the board is. It's working. Let's not mungle it.
Mr. Mayor, I can't recall specifically what that was. It wasn't changing the mandate of the board. It was...
Was that the decision to use the funds from that to purchase additional forest lands when we had enough money? Was that?
I can't remember exactly. I need to review my notes. I know there is a good reason why it's on here, and it was going to be a minor change. Just haven't done it yet. But Councillor McClellan is right. We weren't going to change, sort of the intent of what the committee was established to do. But there was a change that needed to be made.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé?
Yes, if I remember right, the intention was to give the city council the ability to make decisions as into where is the money going, because the legacy, because we were looking at getting extra property and so forth. So it's just for us to have more of a say.
City council has that. What they come to
City council has the
recommendation.
last say of what
Yeah.
they decide.
So we don't need to
and all
change
that.
anything. I'd move we take it off till we know, but maybe let city clerk come back and tell us what it was for.
Okay, well, we can leave it there until you can definitively say what it was for, and then make a decision. Okay, council, then that brings us to Parks, Recreation, and Heritage. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us how we're doing on the number 14.
Very well. So the draft bylaw will be brought forward for the Heritage Commission for your review on next Monday's regular meeting of council. And it would be my suggestion that the pursuit of the development of the quadpartite agreement would be an item that that commission would review. So in the event that council adopts the amended bylaw, that item could, the quadpartite agreement could come across the commission's desk for review and recommendation to council.
Okay, so this is a draft bylaw that you've prepared for us to look at, or you're preparing?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's ready as part of the agenda package for Monday's meeting.
Great. So then the high priority will stay on there until we have dealt with it, and then it could come off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And the next one was revisit options to ban smoking in city facilities and parks.
So at this stage, we staff have posted signage that indicates the 6 meter updated required buffer. So from the 3 meter buffer to open air intakes and doorways has been updated to 6 meters.
Okay, and so that's sometimes is a little difficult to enforce, I betcha,
Absolutely.
especially after Bulldogs or during Bulldogs games.
It's a tricky one for sure.
Okay, but is there something coming? There's something coming to council to consider. Is that what you're saying?
At this stage, so of course before my time, as far as researching other communities, the first sort of note here on smoking bans, that's something I'm happy to continue on if council wishes, or if council's comfortable with maintaining the status quo now that the signage has been posted, then we can move forward with striking it.
Councillor Minions.
I would move that we remove this from the status report. I made this motion originally, and it was more just around getting signage up saying no smoking by playgrounds, and that's been done. So I'm certainly satisfied with the work that's been done.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
I'll second that, so we can talk about it.
Okay, Councillor Paulson.
Just a question here with legalization of marijuana on the horizon. Would the smoking of cannabis in public places fall under the same legislation, smoking in a public place, or is tobacco separate from that, I wonder, or is it something that we need to look at?
I think it's a great question. Of course, smoking on current signage, for instance, when you go to a school ground, it says young lungs at work, don't leave your cars idling. And when in regard to smoking, it doesn't talk about what folks are smoking. It just indicates that, so for instance, electronic cigarettes or vapes, I believe are all considered in the same umbrella. I'm not sure though on marijuana legislation.
Okay, Councillor Alamani.
Yeah, just to add from the perspective at VIU, as a policy, the college is taking it all as the same thing, vaping or cannabis when it comes along, or smoking. I don't think it'll be so much of a problem with cannabis because it is the same thing as far as the act of smoking. Vaping has been really difficult for some reason. People think they can vape wherever. But I think that's just education, ironically, in VIU.
We're still waiting for the definitive legislation anyway on that, are we not?
Correct.
So
Yes.
it's difficult.
Yeah, and at this stage, just to comment on our local facilities, there have been individuals that have elected to vape inside our buildings, and of course they're escorted to the exterior of the premises. So we do not encourage any sort of vaping or smoking of any kind in any of our facilities.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to remove this from the status report. All those in favor? Carried. And the next item is review partner in parks program from the city of Nanaimo and provide recommendations. That's from 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
I would love some insight if council could provide it.
Yes, Councillor Minions.
I made this motion also, and it was there were people in my neighborhood that were saying we want a playground in our neighborhood. There's a lot of young families and no kind of walkable playground near us. And what if we paid more taxes to have a playground? So that's where it came from. Our previous Director of Parks and Rec made the suggestion to review that program. My understanding is that it is somewhat of like a local area tax levy that would support putting a playground in. So I don't know if that's, you know, a direction we want to go or not. It just came as a result of that. I think hopefully with, you know, when there's new subdivisions moving in, there'll be playgrounds put in the new subdivisions, but mine is sort of just a weird example where we never got a playground. So that's where it came from. I'm still there. Still there. Still there, no park, lots of kids.
You don't let your kids play in the bush?
No, I don't.
That's what I did.
I'm not sure if the Director of Development Services would like to speak to maybe the erection of playgrounds in new developments? If I may be so bold to invite him up here?
Or playing in the bush.
That's the most natural place for kids to play. Either that or the mud
I
puddles.
just feel like my 2-year-old is too young for playing in the bush.
And then use a mud puddle. Okay, go ahead.
Well, for instance, we did take that into consideration in the second phase of the Uplands subdivision, and there is not only open space, but there's a dedicated playground piece of property that was required to be dedicated for the subdivision, and with them have made a commitment to use their DCC monies to purchase a playground that we have just received this week that will be installed in that subdivision early in the process. Also, as part of the redevelopment of the old high school site, we've talked about taking funds that are generated from those development cost charges and upgrading the playground equipment in the nearby park at 16th Avenue. So we are, I mean, you're right, the ideal time to do that is to try and incorporate those kinds of discussions in when the development proposals are being put forward. You bet. So I think we've got some recent examples of where we're doing that, and we'll continue to look at that as project comes forward.
Okay, Councillor Alamani?
Thanks. I just wanted to add, and it's sort of what Councillor Minion said already said a little bit, but I'm also in an area of town that used to have 2 or 3 playgrounds that doesn't at all have any anymore. So there may be instances of that sort of thing around town as well, where over time maybe kids have moved away and now we're getting new people coming back in with kids, and they might want that infrastructure back in. So I think there's instances of both. So this kind of a program would make sense. Keep it on the status report.
One of the things we have to factor in too, that's a change in the community, is a lot of neighborhood playgrounds were at schools. And a lot of those schools over the last decade or so have closed, and of course the playgrounds have gone away at the same time. So not only do we need to look at this for greenfield development, we need to look at when there's opportunities when infill things are happening, because those playgrounds that used to service those neighborhoods that used to be at elementary schools and stuff like this aren't necessarily there anymore. So you're right, all those things we need to be thinking about.
Councillor McLennan?
Yeah, I guess the question I've got on this is, are the development cost charges for playground, or are they for infrastructure? Like sewer and water and that kind of good stuff?
Development cost charges are broken up into a number of categories. Parks is one of them. So we have a development cost charge for water that can only be used for water infrastructure. For sewer, can only be used for that. So, but one of our DCC charges is for parks, which so we're not using the water DC charges or the road DCC charges. It's only the ones that were collected for parks purposes.
Okay, thank you. So then with this particular one, do we want to remove it? Does it seem necessary to leave it there, or what's the will of council? Councillor Minions?
It doesn't particularly matter to me whether it's on here or not. I'd be fine with removing it or just getting some information on it, like a very brief report on it to get an idea if it's something that we want to pursue or not. And if not, getting rid of it. I don't know that we need much information on it, but maybe educating ourselves somewhat to decide if it would work is a way to decide if we should put effort into it or not.
Okay. So it sounds like we're just leaving it there as kind of a placeholder, and when you get some information to us, then we can take it off.
Okay.
Because we will have had it. And then the last one is the draft development plan options for Canal Beach for public consultation regarding a long-term development plan. We've certainly done a fair amount of work at which I think is now called Canal Waterfront Park rather than Canal Beach, but there's been a lot of work done on it, and there certainly is seems to be a bit of a plan in long-term development, a lot of it funded through the Kiwanis. Is this something that Manager Goodrow is able to come to us with a proposal, or CAO? Because Mr. Goodrow's been doing a fair amount of work on it.
Mr. Mayor, we've been doing some work at that park, and there's one item on the options list that has tentatively approved to look at the pier, the pilings, to see if they're competent to build out a pier. So it's an example of some of the work that's being done there. We're also in the process of building the gazebo there. I don't know that if council wants to have a fully developed plan, we can leave that on there and pursue that, or if council's satisfied that we're moving forward on that ad hoc basis, then it can come off. Really depends on what is council's vision. Do you want to see a built-out program? Do you want us to engage the public on that, or are you satisfied with the piece-by-piece development of that park?
Well, personally, I'm satisfied with the piece by piece, because I can't see us as council putting a whole bunch of money into this in terms of staff time and whatever else, given that we're tight in many other areas anyway. But that's just me. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Mr. Mayor. Kiwanis, can't remember everything they were going to do, but there were several things, and if they wish to come back and do some more and make that their project, I'd support that.
There's been some really significant changes there, even in the last 6 months. So it's
Looks very nice.
it does, yeah, it is beginning to look really nice down in there. So I mean, personally, I'd like to see it come off, but as I say, I'm one person.
I'll move it comes off. Get a seconder, we can vote on it.
Okay, I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Well, then it's defeated. Leave it on. Okay. It's obviously not high priority either way.
Just to confirm council's wishes, is there anything specific as far as what that plan might look like, or what council would wish to see?
Well, I bet there will be now. Councillor Minions.
Thank you. My understanding is a lot of this research was already done. There was a public engagement, a couple actually public engagement forums where information was collected. And I think that this motion, and it wasn't, I didn't make the motion, but it was to kind of consolidate that information that was already put together by the public. The reason I voted against removing it is that we did hold public engagement sessions on this. And so I think that if we've asked the public for their input, we have a responsibility to at least compile that information at some point. That said, this I think is probably a topic that is best left to, I don't know, the next council, I would think, since we're not going to be taking any large action on it during this budget. But I would like to see it stay on there since we've asked for the input.
Okay, Councillor Paulson.
Just with a background in Parks and Recreation, I know how tight your budget is, and to take on another park period is somewhat onerous. What I would like to see is, if we're moving forward with the park, and once again, the Kiwanis have stepped up in a big way here, but maybe they don't have to be the only one, but further development of the park, I think, needs to come either from granting or from surface clubs. And I'd like to see some, if we're gonna move forward, that's kind of where I'd like to see the funding come from, because every time we add a park, it adds stress to the Parks and Recreation budget, and we just can't be throwing money at it in an unlimited quantity. So that's just my comment. I would like to see who or what might be interested in developing the park, and this might be the park adoption, adopt the park, and, what granting and stuff, but I can't see us being able to, as taxpayers, throw a lot more money in there.
Councillor Alberni.
Yeah, just to explain why I voted against the motion. Like Councilor Minions, we did do public consultation, so it would be good to have that actually come to the public as a whole, so that they know, what the direction was that we got. But it was also an attempt to form an actual plan for the park. And, yes, it's wonderful that we've gotten support from Kiwanis and others, but what will it look like in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years? It would be nice for the community to know that and be able to kind of plan that out and see a vision. Ad hoc is wonderful, but it's very nice to be able to know kind of where you're going, and maybe it'll take us longer or maybe it'll take us shorter time to get there. We don't know. But I think that was the main purpose, was to be able to articulate a vision for that and show it to the community.
Okay. Moving on. We're done.
With the Canal Beach, just
We're just leaving it right there. Let it sit. Low priority.
And where is this public consultation information?
I'm not sure.
How would we know?
I don't remember the public
I
consultation.
don't actually remember the public consultation that's been
So
referred to
who was
twice.
the public consulted and who did they consult with? I don't think it was council.
It was Parks and Rec, and they held an information night, and I believe it was before our council got elected. The information's there, the public was asked, so.
You say so. Just show us where it is.
I don't know where it is.
You said it's there.
I'm a city councillor.
Don't know anything.
Okay, economic development. Arranging a meeting with Chamber and AV Tourism ACRD about external marketing of the Alberni Valley. And I believe that has already occurred. And it is an ongoing thing. It occurs all the time. But I believe this specific meeting has already occurred. What came out of it, I don't know, but maybe we could leave it on there and get a report back from Mr. Deacon. But I'm pretty sure it occurred. Councillor McClement?
Well, I'm not sure. I know there's been constant, Mr. Deacon's been trying to do something about this for a long time, and I'm quite certain it was my motion to put it here, because it's a bear bug for me for a lot of years. And the Chamber of Commerce isn't the problem. The problem is whatever we call AV tourism. They're refusing to do anything really other than advertise their own hotels. And it seems to be something that has to go through so many beds, got to vote on it in hotels and so on and so forth. I've sat at quite a few meetings, and it just seems that we've got to do something. And I don't know if the city can apply pressure or not, but it's getting to a point in my mind where we're not advertised as a city, as functions outside of the valley very much. There's a few groups that'll take it out. I've even sent it out on occasion, got stuff from the Parks and Rec and so on, and sent it out to different places where people have volunteered to take it for me. But I haven't done that for quite a few years, and it just seems like it's not happening. So I hope we can leave it on and support Mr. Deacon and what he's doing to try and get it happen.
Okay, just for council's information, I met with the new executive director of Vancouver Island Tourism last week. He's just moved down to Vancouver Island, is residing in Nanaimo, and he came in January from Prince George. So he can definitely see some issues with tourism promotion on all of Vancouver Island, not just for the Alberni Valley, or not just for Port Alberni. So I imagine he will come through Mr. Deacon. There will be some more information coming, but specific to this one,
Maybe we could invite him here, because up until a year or so ago, the Vancouver Island Tourism didn't know where Port Alberni was, although in the last couple of years, they actually found us and did some stuff.
Yeah, Councillor Sauvé, then Councillor Paulson.
No, I just wanted to state that I agree. As a matter of fact, I feel for the Economic Development Department that they should remain as, it should be placed as a high priority into working on these goals and so forth. So actually, I had this written down that I wanted to set it up as a high priority for him to reach and to meet all the goals, as if Councillor McLennan just mentioned. Some problems are not certain people, but certain agencies. So, but I would like to see a report and see a certain status report, as in where he's standing to this date and what steps are going to be done to get some clarification on where we're heading with the community.
Okay, Councillor Paulson, then Councillor Alberni.
To CAO Ply, just, and maybe it'll wind up with Mr. Deacon, but I think at the crutch of this is the room tax, right? And the room tax was designed to be our external marketing mechanism, and there seems to be a fairly major stumbling block around that room tax situation, and until that can be resolved, I think we're really butting heads here, but, and I don't know what the solution is. I actually sat on that, the AV Tourism Committee for a couple of years, and for lack of a better word, it was quite frustrating, but I think that the room tax is really the crutch of the issue here, isn't it?
It's certainly tied up in that, and there's been some new developments just recently around Airbnbs, for example, that might change the dialogue. I know Mr. Deacon's working very hard on this item. Those conversations aren't something he can speak about in a public meeting, because there's ongoing conversations. But he can bring you back a report with a general update if you like, and the item, if council wants, can stay on there.
Councillor Alberni.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to mention the Airbnb thing as well. You know, we're still the only community almost without a hotel tax, so there's that issue. I mean, it says arrange a meeting, which I think, like the mayor said, it probably has happened. So maybe what we need is just a quick update from the economic development officer, and then we can probably take this off and maybe update it with something else.
Actually, there are 5 other communities in British Columbia who've just recently withdrawn from the hotel room tax, which is interesting. Councillor Minions.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that the Chamber is working really hard on this, and I know they're working with the Economic Development Office. And I think that there are some businesses in this community, and the Chamber kind of leading that would really like city support on this. But that said, I'm not sure if this really is something that it's appropriate for the city to take a lead on. I feel like it should be the business community, maybe led by the Chamber, but I think it should be the business community that leads the direction that they want to go with the hotel tax. And that is certainly really what the issue is. So if economic development feels there's a role to play, that's great. And I'd love an update on what they're doing, but I think it does need to come from businesses.
Okay, we'll leave it there and get a report from Mr. Deacon. Okay, Engineering Department. Report recommending the alternate truck route options. I believe, Mr. Smith, we did some of that in our budget deliberations, right?
So the truck traffic counts were completed and presented at, or they're on our website, and a short report was presented to council. And then on your options list was, where do we go from there? Well, how do we use those to try and look at potentially an alternate truck route other than the super expensive one that we've looked at, prior, that was in the range of $10 million. That, if my memory is correct, was not supported. So that's kind of where this stands now. So even if you don't proceed with that in this budget process, I'm certain it will likely come up again. But as far as this item here, I mean, it's kind of been dealt with to the extent that we can until council wishes to proceed with the next phase of which would be hiring a consultant to help us look at alternative routes.
Right. Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions?
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we either remove this or move it low, since we did not support funding to take it forward. Having it on there as a high priority, if we didn't put funds forward, just seems kind of pointless.
Well, personally, I would not like to take it off completely. We could leave it as a low priority, but I don't want it to just come off of consideration for council. I don't think. No, well, I don't like CAO.
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that because this item is tied up somewhat in budget discussions, you might stand still for now and wait to see what happens in budget discussions, and maybe come back and revise it later, if that's what council wants to do.
Councillor Paulson?
I'd like to see it stay on here. I think that we have, as a council in general, we've indicated to the businesses on Third Avenue and the people on Anderson that we would look into this. And be quite honest, I think that we need to find a solution to Third Avenue or Anderson, and I'm not sure what it is yet, but I don't want to see this come off.
Will the council, do you want to change the rating on it? Sorry. The priority on it? You want to change it from high to low, which is the suggestion? Any comment?
I'll move we change it from high to low.
All right, is there a seconder? Councillor McClellan. And all in favor? And opposed? Okay, it's carried. And also from the engineering department, we have 2 items: the update the active transportation plan with options for AAA bike facilities, and create a phased implementation plan for all abilities protected bike lanes, including possible tree and garden planting. Sorry, Mr. Smith, can you remind me what AAA bike facilities are, please?
Councilor Alberni can probably help me, but I think it's all abilities, all ages and abilities. So essentially, it's a fully separated bike infrastructure. It's some of what we in the first tried on Stamp Avenue, and then discovered that that design far exceeded, our budget, right? So it's not bike lanes on the road. It's fully separated, all abilities bikeways. So that's the idea. And this motion is to change our planning or our engineering documents to say, how can we do that? Where could that possibly be done? We haven't taken any action on this, just to let you know.
Okay, so who is taking, I mean, if in a perfect world, who would be taking responsibility?
The lead on this, the new management or manager of engineering position would take a look at this once. Now, in my mind though, it wouldn't be on their highest priority list. It wouldn't be something that I would be directing them to be the highest on their priority list. Certainly something that maybe the city needs to continue. But there'd be a lot of other things I'd be asking that position to be working on prior than this. I mean, council's going to be providing direction in that way too, but when I'm looking at it for that new position, there'd be other things that I'd be asking them to do ahead of this.
Okay, Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to ask the question. Quite often you've mentioned to us that, you're getting pretty busy, and there's some things you just have said you can't take, and I accept that and understand that. Out of all these lists, is there some of these things that you would rather weren't there, or that you just cannot handle at this time? And if that's a question, because I didn't tell you I was going to ask it, if that's an unfair question, you can answer it another time.
It's not that they can't be done. It's just some of them are going to take a lot longer to do,
that's
given
right.
our current thing. And as far as this particular item goes, does the community and council, are we going down this route? Do we truly believe that we are going to actually build this level of infrastructure? That's important. We might want to step back and say, is that the long-term vision that we want to do? Because if we are, great, then we should be working at this incrementally. If we don't think we're prepared to do that, then maybe it's something that council wants to consider whether it comes off the list or not.
In the end, it's always all about the money.
It is often about that, yes.
Yeah. Councillor Alberni.
Yeah, I would make the point that we're here to judge, whether this is either has been done or hasn't been done, or whether it's a high or a low priority, and not the merits of the actual deed itself. So,
Right.
If we're gonna have that debate, I'd be happy to have that debate. But I think we should at least wait until we have a manager of engineering before we have that debate.
Yeah, I would agree. So are you suggesting just leaving it exactly the way it is?
Yeah.
My question is, there's two items in there, and they, to me, look essentially the same thing, other than the second one says tree and garden planting. Yeah,
And I suspect that's why the city clerk kind of grouped them together, is they're very similar motions, but they came at different times. One came from the committee, and one I assume must have come from a council motion. I'm not sure, but they're very similar. You're right, and we'd be they could be grouped together.
okay.
And that's why I think they're put as one item.
Okay, so council, can we just leave it the way it is? Seeing no response, let's just leave it. Okay, and number 21, investigate improvements to intersection of Gertrude and Southgate. That's an issue of safety that was brought to our attention by a number of people who try to use that crosswalk.
So both 21 and 22, the traffic counts were done with funding from ICBC, and ICBC gave us some preliminary comments based on some of those traffic counts and looking at that. And now it'll be a matter of staff going away to see what sort of design work might we then put forward as a capital project to council. So we haven't done that at that stage.
Okay, so we can leave that the way it is as well, because that's going to be a topic for this new position, or
It'll
this-
be certainly
this
something that
engineering position.
engineering position will look at with our manager of operations, and I'll be involved to a certain degree as well. But it won't be for this budget year, so it's work that still needs to be done there, so they can be left
Right.
on there at that stage if you wish.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, I drive by Gertrude and Southgate a lot, and I understand the problems. And I think education is gonna have to be part of our solution. Like the most dangerous things that I've hit there is individuals riding a bicycle on the road and say, whoops, I want to cross the road, now I'm going to go across the crosswalk without looking or stopping. And I've come close to hitting several in the past year. And I think education on what they should be doing and where they should be going would do it. Most of the pedestrians at least look, not all, but most of them do look. So it is a bad intersection for pedestrian and that crosswalk there.
And it's a tough location because it's so close to that major intersection.
There's not an easy solution to that particular intersection.
Yeah, it's like the one at Johnson and Elizabeth. It's difficult intersection as well. Okay, so ongoing. And then number 23, I think we're finished with that one. Preparing a report regarding options restricting the use of pesticides within the community, and the other is the education best practices. And then a report to council providing broad overview of the issue and re-examining previous city actions and reports. We haven't moved it up other than low priority.
And I gotta be honest, I'm not 100% sure why this is under engineering. I know our previous Parks and Recreation Director, Scott Kenny, has brought a variety of reports over the years to a number of councils on this. So.
Well, that was one of his last gifts to whoever was replacing him, because he moved it away from there. Councillor CEO.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, this file has bounced around with personnel coming and going. In fact, I may have chased a few personnel away So let's get it off of Scott's plate as quick as we can. And my recollection is that the clerk, sorry, Davina, was going to pull together some of the old reports under one brief report to say, this is the work we've done on this file. So we can move this to the clerk's department.
Okay,
We've received reports on this twice.
You have.
yeah. Councillor McClellan.
Mr. Mayor, I think we can take it off. We've dealt with 2 reports. We have had trials of not using one particular pesticide and then going back and using it very minimally, which I think has been working. And, you know, we can either that or hire 10 more people to go and scrape the roads and things like that. But I guess that's the only way. But we did have 2 reports, and we did do several trials. And they came back, and quite frankly, I think we've done it, unless there's something I've missed that didn't get done. Mr. Kenny in particular did several studies on it. So I would move we remove it.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any further discussion on this?
The clerk gets off the hook.
All those in favor of removing this item? Opposed? Carried. Okay. From Finance, developing a purchasing policy that's supporting local vendors and contractors and review social procurement policy examples. It's from the end of November of last year. I'm not sure, don't we already have some policy as CAO?
Mr. Mayor, we have a well-developed purchasing policy, and there is a provision in there for local vendor preference. Council directed us to revise or revisit that local vendor preference, and then shortly after, directed us to look at social procurement policy as well. And so we'll be looking at that. Director Rothwell will bring a report.
All right, Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, I see it doesn't have a priority. I think I'd like to move that we make it a high priority. And if I get a second, I'll explain why.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
And the reason being, the local contractors, particularly those in city limits, do pay your taxes here, and they should have some kind of leg up. And I know there's all kinds of court cases people could have, but mostly when cities our size, they're not gonna bother us. Some kind of leg up to get it. We do have a small, I think $1,000 if we're buying equipment or that, and I don't think it's satisfactory. Social procurement, it depends on who's saying it, what they really mean. It could mean anything, and I think we should define that and so on. So, yeah, I think it should be high, and that's my motion, and I don't think we need to debate it forever until we get the reports back, but that's my reason.
Okay, Councillor Alemany and then Councillor Minions.
Thanks. Let's define, or I would suggest defining social procurement as taking those local contractors and hooking them up with people who are maybe disadvantaged in our community, who need a job and are probably very motivated to do it. So
That's what social procurement
that's what it
is.
is. No, it's putting people to work.
Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Social procurement, I think, is something we're going to be hearing a lot about at AVICC this year. I know that we have a social procurement breakfast, and I know that AVICC Executive Committee has also been working on workshops and specific examples. So I would suggest we wait until after AVICC to see what other communities are doing and maybe give more specific direction, but I do think we should make this a high priority.
All right. On the motion, changing it to high priority. All those in favor? Carried. And then there was we were looking for a report on Shaw Go Wi-Fi, so Shaw to be invited as a delegation. Presumably, we're still waiting to set that up.
Hello. So you may recall that I actually had provided a report back for some council questions back in April, and I suggested we bring Shaw back. It was never marked as a high priority. Shaw actually suggested that they could maybe come back and speak with council. They actually came forward and spoke with the previous council when the agreement for the Wi-Fi was signed several years ago. Since that report, we've also been pursuing services with TELUS, not to stick to one vendor or another. And TELUS has a competing Wi-Fi product now as well that may be able to solve some of the problems people are having since they finally entered that market in Port Alberni.
Okay, Councillor Alberni?
Thanks. So full disclosure, I'm a TELUS customer, but here's the thing: is if we go with the TELUS, then all the people who are with Shaw are going to have a problem trying to connect to that too. So I just go back to the fact that, you know, before all of this, we didn't have a whole lot of Wi-Fi service, but it was pretty reliable where it was. And now we kind of have a whole lot of Wi-Fi service, but it isn't useful to anybody. So it would be nice that it was, you know, useful and available everywhere. And maybe it's something that we need to provide.
Okay. What's the will of council? Do you want to change this, or do you want to make it a higher, priority, or you want to leave it just the way it is? Councillor Sauvé?
No, I just rather, you know, I'm just dealing with our strategic priorities and what our priorities are, and I just don't find it to be a priority at the moment, so I just rather leave it as it is.
Councillor Minions?
I'd be interested in knowing if the TELUS option would work better, because the option we have right now really isn't working well in a lot of the community. I know I literally have never been able to get onto the Shaw guest service, and so if the TELUS option worked better, I think we should explore that. It could be a high priority for Jeff's department, and it would be the only high priority on our list for that department. So it's not a strategic priority of ours, but I think it seems more operational to see to get something that works.
And there may be some people that wouldn't care less. Not to name any names, but there may be some that just couldn't care. So it's whether it's a priority or not is totally up to the user. So, Councillor Minions.
Why don't we take it off our list and let Jeff explore the options when he has time to explore the options?
I'll make that motion to take it off the status list.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Now it's up to you.
Thank
You've
you.
got broad shoulders, my son. All right, under development services, do we want to change the priority on secondary suites provisions? Nope. Okay, then let's do the next one. Remedial action against owner of Arrowview Hotel. I don't think we could get any higher than we are, since we ask you almost every meeting.
Just so council, I've put a slightly higher priority on the nuisance ones above the air review, but I will be certainly working on the air review. But you'll have 3 reports for nuisance at the next council meeting.
Okay.
For three properties.
And the same with the Harbor View under et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. So that's one of the nuisance property reports that will come to you, as well as 2 other properties that are being brought forward by our working group for council to consider.
Okay, and then Councillor Alamani?
Didn't we just skip over a couple?
We did?
Yeah, fire and operations.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I saw finance there and I thought, oh, okay, well, we must be.
Although I would move that they just continue on where they are,
You'll move that
as far as number 26 and number 27.
numbers 26 and 27.
I'll second that.
Okay, we're waiting, for number 27, we're waiting for the RFP to be completely written and issued. CAO?
Mr. Mayor, I saw a draft of that RFP last week, so I'm told today that it's ready to go pending. We're only waiting now for an engineer clearance on a handful of buildings that we've identified, to know that those roofs are capable of supporting the solar structure. So I'm told up to 2 weeks to get an engineer to look at those. So that's the holdup right now.
So it might, but it's in
It's
process.
in process.
So
The document's written.
No matter no matter what we do with it, it's still going to be in process.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
correct.
so there we go. See, there's no reason not to move on. But I appreciate that you held my feet to the fire. I'm sorry? Okay, so the motion was to leave them? Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And then, number 31, the RFP for sale and development of a portion of city-owned property adjacent to Westport.
It's certainly on the list. I haven't made a lot of progress on it recently.
Okay, so it says RFP to be issued. I don't get the sense that it's a super high priority of council, so we might want to change the priority on it. I don't think we want to take it off the list, but we might want to change the priority. What's the will of council? Seeing none, then I guess we leave it just the way it is. And number 32, draft bylaw establishing a social planning commission. I would certainly support that. You know, I'd like to see that commission come into the city. Councillor McClellan?
Well, someone was here in the last meeting and said he was part of the Social Planning Commission. I think it was Robert Gunn.
Robert Gunn, yeah.
So we've got one somewhere.
But it's not an official commission of council. It's sort of an ad hoc group. It's a group in the community rather than a
So
commission
if-
of council.
If we make it a thing of council, what improvement will it be, or will it
The
be an improvement?
The improvement is that the minutes of that commission become part of our public record. And we can then formally direct work to that group to be done rather than, at this point, our current relationship, which is very ad hoc.
It just seems to me, I guess, that if we do that, then we're giving our staff a bunch more work to do, because they're gonna come with the recommendations, and then staff's gonna have to look them up, and I just have a lot of trouble with another talking group that's gonna come up with ideas, and that's all they do. If they're gonna be functional and do things, then I'm in favor of it. If they're gonna just come up with ideas, I'm not.
Councillor Minions?
I think especially given everything going on in our community right now with crime, this is a very important step for us to take. Social Planning Commission would be looking at issues of homelessness, mental health addictions, trying to bring the community together in different ways to start to, and public safety, those types of things. I think this is a really important commission for us to have, where we as council could look for opinions of that commission like we do with the Advisory Planning Commission. Maybe not in such a regimented format, but I think it's a very important step for us to take, and they've expressed a willingness to do that for the community, so I think we should move forward.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think given the circumstances now, there's a lot of important work that's done, and I think it's one way for us to, as a council, to support that work without having to actually individually directly engage in it. These folks have got great expertise and they want to contribute. City Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, the recommendation here is to invite the Social Planning Council to a Committee of the Whole meeting. Our next scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting is in March. Is that something that Council would like to see as the topic for that particular meeting?
I think it's one of the groups where it'd be a great group to add to that, yeah. I think it's something that we could consider at that. I'd like to see that happen.
But I believe it's going to be a shared topic because we still have the agenda on the issue of the uptown issues, big city issues, that is going to be continuing in March.
If there is, Mr. Mayor, I don't know what exactly the topics would be. We had the public meeting, and our next scheduled meeting was not going to be until March. I think that's what was brought up previously, but I don't think
Right.
we have specific topics for that.
Well,
Budget.
other than at our last one, we said, next time we get together in committee of the whole, we want to come back with solutions. Rather than hearing what the issues are, we want specific solutions, and this is part of that. This is part of coming to solution. So I'd personally like to see them invited to that next committee of the whole.
Yeah, and I would second that.
Well, it's already on there, so it's really not a motion that I was making, but I think it's on there as a task. So I'd like to see it there, and I'd like to have council consider it at the next committee of the whole. So unless we want to change that, anybody, we'll just, I see leaving it the way it is. And then the next item, number 33, report regarding the city's nuisance abatement bylaw, including enforcement increase and so on and so forth. Identifying fines and bylaws could help fund additional bylaw services. Is there any other direction from council on these? Councilor McClellan?
Well, Mr. Mayor, we just had a couple of motions at the last meeting passed in this direction, so I think we're going in the direction to do that. So medium, high, whatever.
Okay, I agree. And then including Schedule A, that's part of it. And report and recommendations for consideration on panhandling bylaw, again, to me, it's part of it unless council sees it otherwise. No. And then the number 36, report about general regulation and licensing of dogs. I know I was the one who brought that up. It's not a major one, but I was just thinking, is there some easier way to do this rather than giving out actual license tags every time? Is there some other way of recording it? Something that's more efficient for our staff. But again, it isn't a high priority. Why would we change something that the city's done for the last 30 years? And then number 37 was a report on the current provision of parking enforcement within business districts. And I confess I can't remember what that's about.
I think it partially is that within our two up both in the Southport and the Northport area, a lot of our times and stuff are frankly, they're all over the map. And we wanted to do some research on that and prepare a document to come forward to council about probably trying to put some more consistency to those, or seeing where we've had requests to reduce or increase those times, whether they're still relevant. I think that was the request to do that. So,
because I can see some of the spots where we have 1 hour, for example, and they're in a street right beside a series of restaurants. And does 1 hour actually work generally for a restaurant? Is it fair to the restaurant owner?
yeah. I think over the years we've made some there's been some odd hoc decisions made, and I think there's if you go from one block to the other, it can be different and can be a bit confusing. And that was the reason, I think, for the request, for us to go do some research, see what is currently out there, and then to bring a report forward to council about probably recommending some changes.
Would that be maybe something that a bylaw manager would be looking at?
Oh, I think we could work with that.
Oh, funny how that happens. Councilor Minions.
I'm okay.
Okay, and then the last one, council, is reporting extending the Bike BC grant into 2018 and further investigate separated path options on west, east, so on. Want to change that? Okay, seeing none, then that, I know that the city clerk is on top of all of this stuff, and she's got everything, any changes that we need to make. Okay, anything else, council? Then a motion to adjourn.
I'll make
Move
that
adjourn.
motion.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody.